You're listening to Seek Travel Ride, a podcast sharing bike adventures from people from all over the world. And this episode is sponsored by Old Man Mountain, makers of the most durable bike racks out there. If you want to head out on an adventure, you need to strap gear onto your bike, and Old Man Mountain have you covered in a myriad of ways. Head to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Now, on to today's episode. Hello everybody, Bella Malloy here, host of Seek Travel Ride. Welcome back to another midweek episode where I am fueling your stoke for bike travel adventures. We've got an awesome episode lined up for you today because I'm introducing you to a brand new adventurer to the podcast who I'm going to be featuring periodically in these midweek episodes. Now, about a month or so ago, I put the call out to say to people, hey, are you taking an adventure? Would you like to be part of our community and share updates from the road? And Brian Sampson put his hand up, reached out to me and said, yeah, sure. And my gosh, am I excited to share Brian's story with you. Before we get into that, though, I want to tell you about what happened on the weekend. So one of our awesome, amazing guests, Fergal Guihen, he actually finished his ride. Now, Fergal left from his home in Rossi in Ireland almost 2 years ago, and his end point was the steps of the Sydney Opera House. I was privileged enough to be able to share Fergal's journey and feature his story on the pod across 2 episodes, which is sort of an indication into how much of a fantastic storyteller Fergal actually is. And I spent some time with Fergal a month ago when I did some live shows, and he was one of our guest panelists. And there was absolutely no way, listeners, that I was going to miss being there for his arrival. And the day was amazing. It was an early start for me, catching the bus to Sydney. Beautiful blue sky day, absolutely perfect weather. And I remember I got to the Opera House. Fergal was due to arrive at about 2 p.m. and I got there about an hour earlier, and I was sort of looking around, and it was just the usual, tourists around, taking photos of this amazing landmark. Then I saw some people wearing the good old Rossi to Aussie shirts, and I thought, oh, they're here for Fergal. So I walk up to this group of people and I say, oh, you're here for Fergal, for Rossi to Aussie? And they go, yes, they are. And I said, oh, who are you? And they said, we're his family. And I was like taken aback because it was actually Fergal's dad and his siblings there. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, what were the chances? The first people that I meet are actually going to be Fergal's relatives. But it was really lovely because it meant that I got to spend some time with them, ask him a few questions, and understand how it is that this adventure that Fergal's been on, what impact it's actually had on them. There was an awesome point where I'm speaking to Fergal's dad, and it was quite an emotional day for his dad, as you could imagine. And he just sort of talks about the things that Fergal's experienced. And he said it was the people that got him there, the people along the way, the people that opened their doors to him, that shared their houses with him, shared meals with him, helped him out. And he then goes on to say that Fergal's journey has changed him as a person, and it's opened his eyes up to how the world is. And also to travel. He said that, there would be no way that he would have come to Australia. And because of Fergal, he's come out. He and Fergal's brother Tig, they actually flew out from Ireland and arrived the night before. So, he was battling the jet lag. But yeah, what an absolutely emotional day. And, speaking with his siblings as well, and his sister, Rossi, she sort of says, he's come back a different person. And the little brother now is the one that can flip the questions back and give out a bit of advice as well. But it was also clear just what it's been like from the other side of the adventurer. What is it like for the loved ones of someone who's going out on a long-distance adventure to sort of live vicariously through their travels? We as listeners get really excited about following someone's journey, but, if you put yourself as a family member watching it, there's a different lens that you watch that journey through. And, it was apparent, they lived every single high Fergal had, and they also lived every single low, and probably lived with a lot of doubts in their mind and concerns as well. But then the arrival itself, holy moly. So pretty much the Opera House turned Irish, listeners. It got to this crescendo where more and more and more people started turning up. They were all wearing, their Irish Guard jerseys representing their different counties. There was a high representation from Roscommon, which is where Fergal's from. A lot of Irish flags. And there was pretty much a guard of honour, multiple people deep on each side, from where the road stops and you've got, I don't know, it might be 200 metres or so, all the way to the steps of the Sydney Opera House. And then the steps of the Sydney Opera House were absolutely packed. There was a cool little finish line of Irish flags. And then as it built up, you could see Fergal coming down the road. You see his little white helmet and then him and his bike Nimrod pedaling through the cheers of the crowd. I was stood there watching the emotion on everyone's faces, seeing his dad's face, seeing everything from it. It was just absolutely such an incredible moment. And to be there to watch someone end their journey as someone who, you know, did live vicariously through it. I'd love to, I think I can call myself a friend of Fergal's now as well. So to watch a friend bring it home that way, just wow. Absolutely hats off to Fergal. His adventure was with a sense of purpose as well. He was fundraising for 2 charities. He is an absolute champ and a genuine, good-natured person telling amazing stories of how his experiences of bike travel through the world have actually been. And he has shared the highs and he has shared the lows. He's shared the mundane bits in between in only a way that Fergal can do. And so, yeah, to be there, gosh, it was extra, extra special. And, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. All right, now listeners, time to go to the meat of this episode, and that is to hear about our adventurer, Brian Sampson, sharing his journey. So just a little bit of an overview about Brian before you're going to hear his audio. So he's currently cycling his way around the world, and he's based his journey off a book that he read called 1,000 Places to See Before You Die. So he first read that book years ago when he was a teenager, and that put a thought in his mind that he'd like to go to these places, and he's progressively worked up to that. He's been on the road now, I think, for over 7 years, ridden quite a long way, as you could imagine, in that time. And, yeah, he's going to be taking us along for some of his journey. So, yeah, I'm going to play Brian's audio now. Let's give it a listen, and I'll come back to it and tell you what I think.
Hi, Bella. Thanks for the opportunity to let me share an update on my latest bike adventure. I'm Brian Sampson and currently cycling to see all the places from the book, 1,000 Places to See Before You Die. I'm 37 from New Jersey, just outside New York City. I've been on the road for a little over 7 years now, 75,000 miles through 30 countries. I've checked off about 350 of the 1,000 places. I got the book when I was 15. And decided I had to get to all 1,000 before I died. I figured it would cost some money and take some time. So I thought I'd work till 30, save up as much as I could, and then still be young enough to take on the 1,000. And so right before my 30th birthday, I just took off. It took 4 years to get through the US and Canada. And I'm not completely checking off every place, because the book is more like the 1,000 places that Kelsey and Taylor Swift are going to go on their honeymoon. It's a lot of resorts, expensive restaurants, events. So I just get kind of close to the place if it's a resort and just do something else, like visit a national park or UNESCO site and then just count it. So it's really more of just a framework of where to go in the world and a reason to travel and connect dots. So year 5, I rode from San Diego to Buenos Aires, cut across from Bolivia to Brazil, and then went down the East Coast. And then every year I go home for Thanksgiving in November, and then start up again around Christmas or just after Christmas. So started year 6 in Punta Arenas at the bottom of Chile, rode all the way up to Lima. I still had unfinished business in Peru. Took a flight from Lima to Sydney, did 4 months around Australia, but mostly just the eastern side, and Tasmania. I had no interest in doing the Nullarbor or crossing the outback. Not because I couldn't do it, it just seemed super boring. And then last year, I did 3 months in New Zealand to start the year, zigzagged around Southeast Asia for 5 months, and then 2 months in southern China. I was supposed to start this year in India. I had an epic 3-month loop planned for northern India with a bit in Nepal. Got my visa for India, got the flights. I was monitoring the air pollution as there were headlines that it was pretty bad. Thought about canceling it, but then at the last minute, it got way better. And I thought, there's a billion people that live there. How bad could this pollution be? And I figured I'd go see for myself, thinking it would be fine. Land in Delhi, look out the window, and you could barely see the planes. The smog was so thick. And I thought, oh, this might have been a mistake. Walk outside, and it was just awful. Got a hotel, woke up a few hours later with my chest and throat on fire, and I thought, oh, this might not work. I looked at the air quality index of the places I was going: Jaipur, Jaisalmer, Udaipur, just as high. Jaisalmer was 300 something, which is labeled hazardous. So I call my dad to talk it out. I'm like, this isn't going to work. This is just too unhealthy. I can't ride 5 hours in this every day. So we talked about it and agreed that maybe Japan would be, because I was supposed to end the year in Japan. So I looked at the weather. It wasn't too cold. I've camped in much worse. The deserts out west in the U.S. get so cold at night. Camped in Bolivia at 10,000 feet, and the air seemed clean in Japan. So went back to the airport, booked a flight to Tokyo. So I land in Tokyo, bike and box arrive safely. I'm about to walk out of the airport when I get pulled aside by customs. The guy pulls out this picture book shows me pictures of all these illicit drugs and says, oh, you got any of these? What's in the box? I was like, oh, it's just a bicycle. I'm gonna bike across Japan. He's like, yeah, okay. Can we x-ray the box and maybe check your bags? I said, sure, no problem. So we go to a back room. He goes through my bag, one piece at a time, keeps showing me the picture book. You got any heroin? I was like, no. And then it occurred to me, I had just flown from Newark to Delhi to Tokyo in about 2 days, and it probably set off 1,000 red flags. So I'm trying to explain. I got to Delhi. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out of there. I decided to bike across Japan instead of India. I got out of there as fast as I could, and they kind of started to understand. Then they came back with my bike box. They're like, yeah, it's just a bicycle. And then, yeah, off you go. And I entered Japan. It's way too cold and snowy to head into the mountains in January, so I've been mainly sticking to the coast, which is fine because I don't mind following the roads most traveled. I don't always need to go to the national parks. I love riding through cities. I love visiting temples, cathedrals, the castles, going through the main boulevard with the skyscrapers on either side. Love it. So started in Tokyo, the biggest city I've ever ridden across. Bigger than Jakarta and Sao Paulo, which were massive. First place I stopped was Yokohama. Cool skyline, cool buildings. I thought way better than Tokyo. Then went south to Kamakura, super touristy, so many people. The Shinto shrine, I couldn't get anywhere near it. It was just a massive humanity. But I could get to the Katuru, something like that. The giant green Buddha statue. That was cool. Then the first place I had flagged that I wanted to see was Odawara Castle. It was way better than I expected. For $2 or $3, you can tour the grounds, the keep, the palace, a museum, lots of artifacts, lots of boards with writing that I couldn't read because I don't read Japanese, but plenty of pictures and maps, so I really enjoyed it. Then went over a few mountain passes along the coast, and then Mount Fuji just popped up off to my right. Not a cloud in the sky. Took the whole day to ride past it. It was just there. Loved it. One of the 1,000 places is to climb Mount Fuji, but that's not happening in January. But in my opinion, some volcanoes, they look way better from a distance, from the bottom. And when you climb them, you're just looking down at the bottom. So I wasn't too upset that I didn't get to climb it. Then continued along the coast, just stopping at every castle I passed. A few Buddhist temples, but mostly castles. Crossed the city of Nagoya, another massive city, massive sprawl. Went to the castle in Gifu, and went to see the giant Buddha of Gifu. That was cool. Crossed the pass where they fought the Battle of Sekigahara. I love a good battlefield when there's monuments, a museum. You can get a real feel for what happened, see the geography, how it affected the battle. There were, again, lots of information, but it was all in Japanese. But still, I can just look at Wikipedia. Before I visit any town, I read the Wikipedia page, get a feel for how the people make a living, what they worship, where they worship. And then my next major stop was Kyoto. Had to go over the pass between Otsu and Kyoto and camped up there. And at 2 a.m, something big woke me up. It's sniffing pretty loud. I'm like, oh, great. It might be a deer. So I shook the tent, growled, made some noise, and this thing growled back. And it shook me a little. I was like, that's not a deer. Definitely a bear. I've been a bit worried about bears, but it's January, so they're supposed to be hibernating. So definitely alarmed in this situation. This was fortunate that I was able to scare it off, packed everything up, and got out of there. And since, I've been way more careful about where I picked the camp. Kyoto was awesome. Went to Kinkakuji Temple. It's a golden temple right on the edge of a pond, not too crowded. Then went to, no way I can remember the name of this one, Sensei Gungyen. It's this long hall of 1,000 golden Korin goddess statues with a bunch of guardian god statues in front of them and a big giant Buddha statue in the middle of it all. It's like a 50-yard hallway, and it was empty, which was a little surprising because this was the best thing I saw in Kyoto. But I think the fact that you weren't allowed to take pictures pretty much deterred all the influencers. So I had the place to myself. Then went to Fushimi Inari something. But it's this mountain where you climb up a long staircase, and there's just hundreds of these red gates that you walk under the whole way. These red arches covered in Japanese characters. That was pretty crowded. Finally made a stop at Byodo-in, a temple that I actually built at a Connects when I was younger. So that was cool to see in person. From Kyoto, I went south to Nara, where Totoji, largest wooden building in the world. That was pretty incredible. Giant wooden statues of the guardian deities. And it's also in Nara Park, where all the deer walk around. And you can pet them and feed them crackers. But deer are the worst in New Jersey, so was not interested in worshiping any deer. And I think they're all malnourished because they just eat crackers all day. So it reminded me a bit of me trying to keep weight in wrestling in high school, just eating crackers, malnourished. My final stop for this update was Osaka, another huge city. The main drag, you have all the big billboards, like in Times Square, but much smaller scale. Osaka Castle is great. I was able to stay with a warm showers host, so I was able to spend the whole day exploring the city. It was the smallest apartment I'd ever seen or been in my life. It's just this short hallway with bunk beds. And that's the one thing I love about warm showers is, yeah, it's great to have a place to stay, but just to see how the locals live, ask them what they think about where they live, the politics. So the plan is to keep continuing west towards Fukuoka and the ferry to South Korea. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing your adventure with us. And listeners, my gosh, there's so much in this update that I wanted to talk about. One is just how Brian's approaching this adventure himself, and also, I guess, adapting that 1,000 places to see list for something that's going to make him more enthusiastic about it as well. You know, he was saying, there's a lot of stuff on that list that doesn't interest him whatsoever. So he's adapting it to suit him and what he wants to see. Something else I love is that he's actually got his own little ranking system for the places that he does see. I'm going to put a link to Brian's blog in the show notes, and you can see the ranking system that I'm talking about there. it pretty much generates on this idea that when he gets to one of these places, the so-called places to see before you die, he sort of starts the timer on his stopwatch and just stands and takes the place in. And he stops it when he feels like he's got a feel for it, and that's enough. So his ranking system is the places that his watch goes for the longest are higher up the list, obviously. So it was pretty cool for me to sort of have a bit of fun the other day and actually scroll up and down the list and see where he's gone and how he's ranked stuff. The other thing that I loved about this update was just how absurd bike travel can be sometimes. You know, being held up by customs in Japan because they think that you might be a heroin dealer because you decided to leave India after only being there for a few hours. It's like, what on earth is going on? But then also that moment where Brian's in his tent in Japan and he hears this noise and realizes it's a bear outside. Like, that is just a situation that I don't think happens to many other people. But bike travel seems to throw us into these crazy scenarios, doesn't it? The other thing is, and I mentioned it a little bit briefly, is just how adaptable Brian is. So not only has he adapted his list, but he adapts it to him. So, you know, when he did land in India and he wants to see these places, he does, but not to the detriment to himself or his health. He could tell that it wasn't going to be somewhere that was going to be good for him to be in, so he changed tact. And I love that idea of his flexibility in that. And, you know, it's sort of something that I pick up from a lot of long-term bike travelers is putting that flexibility in your back pocket and adjusting the trip to meet your needs and not to just stay to a rigid plan. And I think something that sets Brian apart perhaps from many travelers is the idea that he really does thrive in being in cities, in crowded places, seeing, you know, temples, castles, seeing the cityscapes, riding through the busy streets. You know, that gives him a sense of excitement. And it's refreshing actually to hear that. It was funny, Brian, when I heard you talking about cycling through cities, it took me to the last time I cycled through a bigger city, and that was actually Paris. I was actually cycling there on my Brompton, and I was cycling to a different train station. I had a train to catch to northern Germany to go and visit Heinz Stucker, and I took my Brompton for that trip. And Paris is amazing. It's got lots of, you know, bike path infrastructure and stuff through the city now. It's really built it up since COVID times, and every time I actually revisit Paris, the infrastructure there is just increasing. But there's a craziness about it. There's sort of like, I don't know, there's an energizing craziness about it. Like, you're in and out of traffic, you're zipping along. It's a busy, packed city. And I don't know, there is an energy to it. So I can really pick up on that, Brian. Now, personally, I don't want to be in that environment for days and days on end. You know, just a few hours in Paris was enough for me. And I live for the empty, vast landscapes and spaces. But it is refreshing to hear that different point of view, that some people's energizing environments aren't for others, and Brian really lives off that buzz of the city. I also liked, it was sort of subtle, but there was an element where you can hear about Brian being a long-term traveller. Just an anecdote, like the idea that he knows for himself that sometimes seeing a volcano from the bottom looking up is actually far more impressive than being at the summit looking down. And I've just thought, you know, have I actually even seen a volcano? And if I did, like, how, you know, I don't even have that perspective of I've reached the top of it or something. I would definitely have to reach the top of it, Brian. I think if I was, you know, in a capacity to see a proper volcano, I would want to see it properly. But yeah, just little things like that. And also, you know, when he did decide to go to Japan, realizing, well, yeah, it's cold and it's winter, but I know that I can deal with those temperatures. And, you know, again, it's that sort of experience that you can layer on as you go to shape your itinerary out as well. So that's the first update from Brian. Listeners, I've got links to his Instagram account and also his blog in the show notes. Give him a follow, check it out. Yeah, periodically you're going to be hearing more updates from more countries, and we're going to hear more about these places on his list. I want to hear from you though. I want to know, are you the sort of person that does have a list of places you want to see? Do you have a bucket list of places you want to go to? Have you done that? Get in touch with me. Send me an email at podcast@seektravelride.com. Let me know what is on your bucket list and where you went and what it was like to go there on an adventure. Listeners, when I head away from home on my own bike adventures, there are a few things I always take with me, and having a VPN has become non-negotiable. remote work and bike travel are just a fact of life for me now, especially as I split my time between Australia and France. I've been using NordVPN for around 4 years now, and it means that I can get on with all the boring life admin that isn't going away just because I'm on my own bike adventure. I can use public Wi-Fi to do things like banking, logging on from cafes, campgrounds, hotels, train stations and airports. And I always know NordVPN have got my back, giving me peace of mind that my data is protected. I like that Nord's simple and fast to use. It works on all of my devices. To get the best discount off your own NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/STR. Our link's going to give you 4 extra months on their 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link's in the podcast episode description box. Support the brands that are supporting this podcast. Now back to the episode. Now, speaking of bike adventures, before I wrap things up, I want to do a bit of a community roundup and a shout out because there's some really great things happening in our bike travel adventure space. One thing that really caught my attention recently is the Bikepacking Routes Gear Hub. So essentially, it's a shared gear library where people can borrow bikepacking equipment rather than needing to have the outlay of buying individual items for themselves. Like, I think one of the biggest barriers for people getting into adventures sometimes is actually that cost. Like, gear does cost money, and getting the stuff that you need, even for some of us, if it's, something we can afford, not everyone is necessarily in that position. And I guess also, when you're first trying something out, it's also like, you don't know whether you like it yet. So there's also that barrier to making an investment on it. Anyway, the Bikepacking Routes Gear Hub is now live. They've got a fantastic website, and it's got links on there which will show you where their gear libraries exist. So far they're throughout the US, but they do have plans to obviously expand as the gear library grows as well. I definitely want to give a shout out to our podcast sponsors, Old Man Mountain, because they have gone on board here and they're actually helping supply some of the gear for this library too. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Personally, they've been a fantastic sponsor of the podcast, and I think it comes from their genuine ethos of community first. Like, they really do nurture and foster a community around them. So special shout out to Old Man Mountain. You're doing amazing stuff there. And yeah, I'm going to put links up to the gear library that Bikepacking Routes have put together so that you can check it out. If you're in the US, this might be something you can tap into. But I also wanted to give a shout out, like where I am here in Canberra, there's actually just been a bikepacking gear library launch here as well for our community. So I'm going to put a link up to them as well. That's been set up by Steph Skinner, an absolute champ in our Canberra local community too. So I'll put links up to there. And previous guest of the pod, Saoirse Potty, I've spoken about her. She's just started the Snail Blazers initiative. I'm not sure what I would call it, community in Ireland. And she's looking at setting up a gear library there as well. And is looking out for donations. So if you're in a position in Ireland or somewhere to support that, please get on board. But also, I want to know where these gear libraries exist. I'm sure the ones I've mentioned aren't the only ones out there. And more will occur and pop up. And I was thinking it would actually be really cool to keep tabs of that so that, people in this community can tap into it if they need to. So if you know of a gear library in your local community and you'd like to highlight it to people far and wide, get in touch with me and I will start compiling a bit of a list there. So how awesome is our bike adventure space when community groups and gear libraries and events that are inclusive are popping up from all corners of the world. So yeah, shout out to the community. Speaking of community listeners, it's time for me to do my favourite part of the show, which is shout out a big massive thank you to you, my super fans who are supporting me and this podcast. This week, I firstly want to shout out May Totero, a previous podcast guest. Listeners, I shared May's awesome story about how she came into bike travel and she is taking off awesome off-road adventures on her mountain bike. So May has said, "Hi Bella, here are a few coffees from snowy Canada. I continue to love your podcast and they provide me with inspiration and motivation. I love how positive you are without sugarcoating everything. You are often asking the questions of the guests I would ask myself. They're great interviews. Keep up the wonderful work." Thank you so much, May. Oh, gosh. As to my interview style, well, I think it just comes from being a curious person. Like when I'm interviewing a guest, listeners, I'm just genuinely curious to hear what it was like for them. And I don't know when you tune in, can you pick up on that? Can you pick up on my curiosity of they've said something and it sparked a thought in my mind to ask a question, and we go down adventure rabbit holes that didn't exist before I pressed record, and I especially love that. So thanks, May. I'm glad that you're enjoying that too. And then I have Steve C, who has said, "Hi Bella, I've just finished listening to your podcast with Claire Wyatt. Awesome. I have serious adventure envy, and I especially love how she is the dog whisperer. Your show is just getting better and better. Heinz Sugar was so interesting too. I had a bit of a social media meltdown before Christmas and I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going analog and I'm going to delete my Facebook and my Instagram accounts. Then I thought, hang on, how am I going to follow Seek Travel Ride? So I had to undelete them all. And you are such a nerd updating routes on OS maps. Me too." Oh, well, Steve, thank you so much for that beautiful message. Claire is definitely the dog whisperer. Listeners, if you've heard any of Claire's episodes, you will know 100% why I labelled her that. I'm glad to be your reason to stick with the social media. I think the adventure community we have here on Seek Travel Ride makes it a bit more of a pleasant space. And yes, Steve, I'm all about updating the OSM base maps. If that makes me a nerd, so be it. But if it means that one person out there is not going to have a route mapping fail because of it, then power to us all. And I'm glad that it sounds like you do the same as well. Thanks for supporting me in the pod. And listeners, if you want to do as May Tatera has done and Steve C has done and support me in the podcast, you can simply head to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Buy me a virtual coffee, but let me know what is it that you love about this podcast and where is your next bike adventure going to be taking you. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Listeners, that's the end of the episode. But before you go, don't forget to check out Old Man Mountain, who are supporting this podcast. Check out their 12-litre Atlas rack pack, which is a pretty cool addition if you want more space without sacrificing any stability. Head to oldmanmountain.com and support the brands that support this podcast.